So we begin. He's continuing the description of the experience of Ashwapati, who is no longer limited to this small physical entity that we are, or we think we are, the body, the life, the mind. Because there are so many other planes and layers to our being. We're on page 30. So we are actually all the time absorbing or opening ourselves, knowingly or unknowingly, to all kinds of other forces. In a sense also, you were asking Dorothy, the more you ask for the higher experiences, the more the lower forces will also make their demands. They feel that you are trying to escape from them. So they will try to clutch you. So here it is as if the power of the consciousness, where he is no longer bound by the ego. Ashwapati is no longer trapped in the ego. And so his being has become much, much more open to all the kind of possibilities of manifestation. A few may never manifest themselves in our little lives, but they are there. The universe is full of infinite possibilities. So it is a low muttering rose from the subconscient caves. That is the first beginnings of the movement out of utter nescience, utter inertia, the breaking down of inertia. There is as if there is a pressure of light which is always there, the involution of the consciousness, where from below, from the total unconsciousness, there begins to be some kind of a response. The response is not something that is very clearly formulated. It's like a stammer, it's like a muttering, but it is not utter inertia any longer. A low muttering rose from the subconscient caves, the stammer of the primal ignorance. In the primal ignorance, there is absolutely total darkness. That total darkness is breaking because there's a pressure of consciousness that is coming from above. And there is a response from that involved sleeping deity that is there, waiting to be woken up. The stammer of the primal ignorance. Answer to that inarticulate questioning. Something is moving. From below, it is as if there is a sense of the coming out of inertia. But why? What is there? What is the new change that is coming? We often do that because Mother speaks of change and the descent of a new consciousness. We don't exactly experience those things. We don't know much about them. But maybe we feel something that is no longer, we feel that the need to be no longer the way we were, something that is breaking out of the original state. And answer to that inarticulate questioning, they are stooped with lightning neck and thunder's wings, a radiant hymn to the inexpressible and the anthem of the superconscient light. When you speak of a hymn, usually the hymn goes upwards. There's a rising up of aspiration in the hymn. Here he says they're stooped, as if a descent takes place. A strong descent comes down from above, because there's a beginning of the opening in the total inertia. And Mother also speaks about that if there is in us a slight crack in our resistance, just even a small, you might say, fissure, the grace can come absolutely filling our nature. Usually we are like closed walls. Our nature is surrounded by the whole cell of ignorance and darkness. We live in that kind of world. But if there is the least opening, the grace, the light is always waiting and will rush downwards. So he's giving us the image of the lightning of the, you might say, intuition. Intuition is like a flash in the darkness. In our darkness, there is a sudden illumination, a sudden revelation. So these are faculties which are now beyond the mind, and Ashwapati is no longer limited by the narrow mental horizon. And sudden openings take place, revelations come, and not only light, but power, consciousness and force, lightning and thunder. But thunder is really the sound, a projection of a certain vibration of energy. So through that, some kind of a manifestation of that which is beyond thought, beyond language, beyond our understanding, we suddenly get connected to that power, that consciousness. And the anthem, which is a song of joy and glory of the superconscient light. So we are not small beings. If we allow ourselves to open, if we start by realizing that we have locked ourselves up in our littleness and centered ourselves in the little central being, the surface being that we call ourselves, the ego, if this is rooted out, then the being can participate in the play of the universal forces. The universe is a play field of infinite forces, and we can open ourselves to them, we can receive them. So their receptivity and openness, they take place. So all was revealed there. None can here express. Here, in our mental world of darkness, which we call light, our understanding, our reasoning, which has its own argumentation, its own explanations, this is no longer there for him. And so there is an opening to what is really a revelation, vision, which is the true sight, drishti, seeing the invisible. Because our physical eyes see only the physical truth, the physical surface. When we are no longer dependent on our physical nature with its central ego, we break out of this, as Ashwapati has. He opens himself up to the play of vaster forces, and he sees and he hears. So this is what is drishti, this is what was called shruti in the ancient times, the reception, the receptivity of powers and lights. And you realize that nothing exists which doesn't have a divine presence. And the ancients knew this. Everything contained a divine presence. Nature was a field of manifestation of the divine, waiting for that moment when she would break out or come out of the resistances, waiting for the right moment. And slowly the emergence of power, of knowledge, of light, of beauty, of joy, all these principles that are expressions of the divine. There is nothing that is undivine, basically. All these things are layers, sometimes very dense layers, but layers that can be removed. So, vision and dream were fables spoken by truth. Fables, not really as something that is not true, fables contain another kind of truth, which is not the surface truth. So when somebody has a vision or a dream, the mental man will say, oh, all this is not true, you're dreaming. Perhaps that is a greater truth. Perhaps has entered into a connection with a world that is much vaster than the narrow field of understanding mind. So it is a kind of opening that was allowed to man, that is always there. It is we who have trapped ourselves in the darkness and then say, where is the light? We close our eyes and see everything dark, and we deny the light. There is no light. All we need to do is to open our eyes, not the physical eyes only. Every part of our being has its own ability to see, to experience. We are made of many parts. There is the surface being, there is the inner being, there is the still inner being, there is the inmost being. All these have their own capacities, characteristics. It's senses, what is really sometimes described as the indriya, the senses, because the senses connect us with what is around us. You see, not necessarily what is. You see sometimes what is not seen by others, but you see, because you're not seeing with your physical eyes only. You're seeing with the eyes of your mind, or you are seeing with the eyes of your spirit, or you're seeing with your eyes of your consciousness, or you are seeing with the divine within you, so you know all is the divine. It all depends on where you take your stand. Therefore, vision and dream were fables spoken by truth, or symbols more veridical than fact. Fact is the narrow physical starting point, which is a very thin layer, the outermost layer of reality. Reality is much vaster. Veridical is true. Is the word which, but not truth as your mental, you might say, understanding calls truth. We realize how little our mental understanding is. We rely on our minds, but the true comprehension, the true knowledge comes from experience, not through understanding. Mind has this capacity to analyze, to explain, to justify, but also to doubt, to disbelieve, to judge. But one thing it cannot do is to experience. Our bodies can. It can really touch, come in direct contact with something. Our hearts can. Reason cannot. But outer fringes of mind, like the imagination, the intuition, then you are going slowly beyond the ordinary mind, venturing into domains of opening to light, because mind fundamentally is an instrument of light. And we mustn't forget, this is the yoga of Ashwapati, the yoga of light, of knowledge. Sri Aurobindo said about himself, I started my journey as a jnana yogi. Other people may follow other paths. Each one follows the path that is most suitable for him. He was a seeker of knowledge. Knowledge, he comes very soon to realize, knowledge cannot be something that is outside you. Knowledge has to be lived. Knowledge has to be experienced. Otherwise, I see you, but I see according to my vision. My vision is always defective. I will see not everything. I can't see the whole. I see the part. And on the basis of that, I draw a conclusion, which is even more defective. And that is the problem of mind. It follows its own way of seeing. But if I become you, if I can penetrate with my inner vision, the whole being, then I know who you are. And that is what we have to do with the divine. We have to become that. If I want to know the divine, I have to become the divine. Otherwise, I grasp whatever little my understanding can take hold of, which will be very small. On the basis of that, I can erect a whole philosophy, a whole religion, all kinds of different formulas, and each one is very, very sure that he is right, because there is a little, you might say, particle of truth in everything, but can't make that particle the totality of truth. So, vision and dream were fables spoken by truth, or symbols more veridical than fact. And that is a symbol. The symbol is a representation of a reality that is far greater than the representation. You get it? For instance, I see a circle, but it is a representation of infinity. It has no beginning, no end. But I don't use the word infinity, I say a simple thing like a circle. So every symbol is actually a representation of something much vaster than what it seems to be. Each of us is a symbol. Everything is a symbol of something that is much vaster than what it stands for outwardly. And therefore, what you may even say is good or evil or beautiful or ugly is also a symbol. It stands for universal truths and principles. In the play of multiplicity, there is a play of infinite variety. And nothing is that is not, doesn't have a possibility of an expression of the divine. But what my understanding describes as good or describes as the opposite of good is limited to my judgment. My judgment is narrow. Mental judgment cannot contain the all. Even the dark, titanic forces have been created by the divine origin. They have a role to play in the whole. You get a beautiful line that comes towards the end. A mother's arms are stretched out in love towards her rebel sons. The dark forces seem to have gone against the divine and fight the divine. And yet the grace and the love are always there for them too. And they want to return back to their mother. They return by coming close to her through battle, through revolt. You can't wrestle with somebody from far. You have to wrestle from very near. So there are many ways. We can't say that the dark force has not in its core a divine origin. Or the dead person is not there anymore. He doesn't have a body. Existence is not just a body. Existence is something that is infinitely varied and infinitely vast. So in the next line he says, the ever-living, whom we name as dead, could leave their glory beyond death and birth. This is a limited format of death and birth. You are born at this point and you will die at this point. This little framework of time. But you came from the infinite and you go back to the infinite. Nobody goes away. Only they go out of our range of experience, possibly because we are limiting ourselves to that connection with the external. So I can't see this person anymore, so I say he's gone. So the ever-living, whom we name as dead, could leave their glory beyond death and birth to utter the wisdom which exceeds all phrase. They return to the origin from which they have come. Like he says in that poem, the Rishi, from him we come, to him we go, desire eternally. So he is the eternal. He is our origin, he is our goal. In between, there are all kinds of plays. It's a leela. We play for, we play against, we turn around him, we do move away from him just so that we can come back to him. So this, where else can we go? There is nowhere else. There is nothing else. There is only the infinite, and he is the divine. So the kings of evil and the kings of good, appellants at the reason's judgment seat, proclaimed the gospel of their opposites, and all believed themselves spokesmen of God. This is what happens when mind takes over. And mind makes categories and says, this is light, this is dark, this is good, this is evil. And he's talking about the judge in a court who sits and listens to different solicitors and lawyers and pleaders who pronounce for or against the person who is the defendant. The appellants, they make appeal. They are pleaders. But the judge is reason. And so reason makes difference. This, you are right, so you will be rewarded. You are wrong, so you will be punished. Because this is what is easier for man to grasp. When he has not gone beyond reason, it is easier for man to grasp. And it is on this basis that so much of our philosophy, and more than that, religion, is based. So the separation between good and evil, between right and wrong, between what is true and what is not true, for a long time, maybe we follow this path because it is simpler, it is easier to move on a narrower field in the beginning. We can't suddenly jump into the middle of the ocean and expect that we shall reach the other side, because we don't even know where is the other side. So we walk along a narrow path or a narrow stream, and we can cross that stream. But when we broaden ourselves, we realize all the streams and all the rivers enter into the infinite ocean. There is no differentiation. So, and all believe themselves spokesmen of God. The gods of light and the titans of the dark battled for his soul as for a costly prize. This is because man, of all creatures, is the only one who can change. We are small beings on a very small planet in the universe. But the privilege of man is that you can become more than man. In fact, to be more than man is what is to be a man. To exceed himself is man's manhood. That man is man who has attempted to become more than what he was, break out of his boundaries. So these forces, they want to take hold of man. The forces of God, of good, whom we call gods, they say we can try to change this person into an embodiment of righteousness and goodness and virtue. But the thing is that they don't have much energy. They have consciousness, they have light, but the gods don't have force, less force. The titans, on the other hand, are embodiments of energy and force. They dominate. They can sweep us away. They don't have light. So this is where man often finds himself caught between power and consciousness. And power is stronger. And the ego is the embodiment of that titanic force in us. The ego obeys the titan, and that is why it is much easier to move towards the asura and not towards the god. This story Mother recounts of the legend of creation, before time, before space, when there was only the Supreme, there was nothing but He. At some point, for whatever reason we don't know, He decided to manifest Himself. There was no universe until then. So He projected out of Himself His creative energy, His Shakti. And He tells her, now you create. So she projected out of herself different powers: life, consciousness, truth, and joy. And she tells them, you interplay, you join, you play, and you build a universe which will be made of truth and light and life eternal and happiness. But they, so thrilled with the responsibility and the authority given to them by the Divine Mother, they felt such a pride, their ego bloated, and Mother says it's like their powers were stretched, and when you stretch a very long rope, it twists. And that twist she called perversity. And the moment that power thought, I am the creator, light became darkness, truth became falsehood, life became death, and joy became suffering. Joy, love, beauty, they are a triple term of Ananda. So then she looked back to the Lord, who was watching quietly from behind, and she said, didn't work. So Nipafama, what should I do now? So he said, start again. But this time, don't give them such a long rope. Hold them in check. So she made a second batch of horses. But she didn't give them so much force. The second batch are the gods. The first batch became Titans. And they were her firstborn sons. And they are very strong. The gods are not so strong because they remain in touch with their mother, who guides them all the time. So when your mother does everything for you, you don't have to do much for yourself. So the gods are divine, no doubt. But they don't influence us that much as the Titans do. So, but it is through man that the lesser can become the greater, because neither the Titan nor the God can evolve. They are what they are. Man can move, grow, change. He can rise, but he can also fall. His journey is not straight. It moves in a spiral, a vertical spiral, as Aurobindo says. We rise to fall, we fall to rise. It goes on and on and on. So they want to take hold of the human being. It is because it is through the human being that all possibilities can gradually become evident. There, in every hour, loosed from the quiver of time, there rose a song of new discovery. So this is what he is seeing. Time is a kind of a continuous field of manifestation. All change takes place in the field of time. Outside time there is no creation, there is no manifestation. Outside time and space. And there are sharp changes that take place, which he calls arrows. From the quiver of time, moments of sudden change, of rise and fall come. A boat twangs hum of young experiment, as if time is experimenting to create life out of the lifeless, to create mind out of the mindless, to create consciousness out of unconsciousness, matter which was nothing but energy, it doesn't seem to have any matter, slowly is turned to matter. So it's as if experiments. And some of these experiments are not complete. So that in the world of matter, the unconsciousness is there. It is not only the form, matter is form. Matter is inert form, but it is within that inert form is lodged the power of energy. So that when you burst the atom, you have a force of energy that can be used for the better or for the worse. Energy doesn't have a direction. So to be able to use energy in the right direction, you need more consciousness. Slowly, life comes out, but life is still not aware of its consciousness. It moves. It is more conscious in its need to survive. But for what? For what does a plant live? Yes, it moves towards the sun. It moves towards the light. But is there a purpose? That comes when mind comes into play. Mind says, I'm alive and I have a reason to be here and I can choose my path. I can move in a direction. So it's like every stage there is a young experiment that manifestation or evolution is making, and evolution takes place in time. So each day was a spiritual romance. Romance is not a love story. The original meaning of romance was a long poem, a narrative poem. Every culture starts with narrative poetry because it contains the whole purpose of that culture. And in that, there is always the image of a being of light who wants to conquer darkness. Every story is a battle between darkness and light. Whether it's a play or a story, there are forces of light and forces of darkness, or a being of light and a being of darkness. So, that is why that battle, the end of the battle is not guaranteed. There are moments where the being of light seems to lose. Life puts us in front of difficulties before which we break down. We don't always conquer. The hero is the one who moves through time, facing all difficulties and arriving finally to the goal that is put in front of him. So all early cultures, all of them start with these narratives. They are sagas, they were called sagas, long stories, always a hero who would take up a challenge and achieve something that is well nigh impossible. But he'll break out of his present limitations, face all difficulties in order to move to another stage. So every day is actually for us an opportunity for change, for growth, for breaking out of our present state into becoming something we know we can be, but we are not yet. Because there are hindrances, there are limits, there are things that pull us down. But if we live not as we do normally automatically, but consciously, we realize that every moment is an opportunity for progress, for change, for growth, for becoming other than we are. And that progress is not smooth. The resistances will always be there, and that is why victory is so important. And break out of my present, I will not give in. I am weak, yes, I have difficulties, I have problems, but they are opportunities for me to strengthen myself, to go beyond. But that is always the essential theme of all these ancient romances. It is as if the race knew this is the reason why we were. Today the race has forgotten, the human race has forgotten this. There are many mysteries that the ancient world knew that have been completely wiped off by time. So here it's that symbol that each day was the opportunity for a change, for a growth into this new possibility of manifestation of the Spirit. As if he was born into a bright new world. Adventure leaped, an unexpected friend, because unless there is daring, you can't be a hero. Adventure comes from the word to venture. To venture is to dare, and not to accept. Not to accept the present, to break out of the present state into something that is not yet done. That is what counts. And danger brought a keen, sweet tang of joy. Each happening was a deep experience. There were high encounters because there are all kinds of forces. Those that all of them want the soul of man, because it is through man that these forces can really manifest themselves. And this world of multiplicity is manifesting itself through the human evolving nature. So there were high encounters, epic colloquies. Colloquies are debates, clashes. You can't have a debate if there are no opposite opinions. So it is like the journey of consciousness is really an adventure of consciousness. The development of the human nature is against all opposition. Otherwise there would be no development. There would be no need to change. If all is fine with me, I think I'm very fine, I'm very happy, I don't need anything, then I stay where I am. But when I face that sense of inadequacy, I am not good enough, I realize that because I have the ability to break out of it. Otherwise I wouldn't say I am not good enough. I wouldn't say that I live in the dark unless I have somewhere a notion of what is light. I wouldn't say I am weak if I didn't know what was strong. So something of that knowledge of the strength is there within. And so within us, the two forces are always battling. You give up, you give in rather, to the surface easier solution, then you remain where you are, more or less stagnant. That also is part of the story. A ship is sailing across the sea of time, but the winds and the waters are not strong enough, so it stays more or less where we are. So in the same way, man for a long time has not really moved much ahead. He moves, he thinks, but it's in the same groove, the same pattern. But there are a few, there are some guides who choose not to repeat the old steps, the old journey. And there were high encounters, epic colloquies, and counsels came couched in celestial speech. Counsels, like in the court, each person has his own counsel, has his own lawyer, and each one wants to tell you, this is what you should do, this is what you should obey, then you will be acquitted. And the counsels are for both sides. There are those who try to explain and justify the weakness very sweetly. Why should you suffer? Give up this world, give up this life. Why should you continue to be attached to this world of manifestation? Heaven is above. Go there, leave this earth. And there are others who say the opposite. So there are always, like in every court, it is as if this image is there in all ancient cultures also, the judgment seat. There is a king, there is God who is sitting on the judgment seat. And it is not as if he judges you whether you have been good or evil. It is as if he sees whether you have made an attempt to break out of the mold of the present. That was put on he makes that image also, the debit side and the credit side. It's very systematic. There is a notebook, which is your book for each person. And this is part of the karmic law. And this is taken up in the later part of your journey, in another life, in another birth. There are things you have not covered. There are things which you have omitted, or things you have tried to avoid. You have to go through them, because otherwise the journey is never complete. And honeyed pleadings breathed from occult lips. These are the forces, vital forces, se- some semi-divine forces. They are gods from the middle worlds. They don't belong to the highest world. And that is what tempts us, because they are close to us. Not the supreme, that's too far away. There are other emanations, they come close within our range, and they try to explain and accept our weakness. Yes, you're only a human being, it doesn't matter, you carry on, and so on and so forth. And to help the heart to yield to rapture's call, all you need to do is to be happy. And Sri Aurobindo gives an instance which is rather ironic. He speaks of a person who had in his life done nothing that was worthy of being close to the divine. If you are not close to the divine, you are in hell, of course. That is the term hell, a place that is cut off from all light and all divinity. So, this person was in hell, which is symbolized as burning in fire. But you don't burn up, so you burn eternally. That sense of pain and suffering is constant. So because he had done one good deed in his life, he's asked, what I can give you relief for one day. What do you want? He said, can I be allowed to sit on an iceberg? Sit on a big piece of ice, because I'm burning the whole time. So Sri Aurobindo says, he didn't realize, he asked for it, he was given, that after that, the day after that would be much worse. He would go back into that hellfire. This is a symbolic story, but this is man. This is man, he wants some of the rewards and doesn't realize that these rewards often become punishments, greater punishments. They become more difficult to bear. Therefore, and sweet temptations stole from beauty's realms, and sudden ecstasies from a world of bliss. So this breaking out of that small field of human experience into the vital world, into the world of often all kinds of possibilities of manifestation. In the world beyond the material, physical, you have the manifestation of perfect form, which is beauty. And perfection of form is blissful. So, but you want to possess that form, and then you lose that joy of perfection. The moment you want to keep that beauty only for yourself, as man does, he is no longer really happy. All you really want to be is happy. He can't. He's shut up in his little self. All these worlds come within the range of Ashwapati's vision and experience. It was a region of wonder and delight, things that are not really understood by the mind. See the vastness and the fields. And this is very Vedic, because in the Vedas, in the ancient Puranas also, we are constantly told about powers and principles and forces. They live in the fire, they live in the tree, they live in the sky. And it's not a myth. Nothing is just what it seems. There are things that are there, hidden. And when you discover this, you see how rich the universe is. It was a region of wonder and delight. All now his bright clairaudience could receive. Clairaudience is hearing. We hear very little. Our physical ears can't hear the loudest sounds, can't hear the softest sounds. The range of Hearing is very, very narrow. Clairaudience is the opposite. You hear all forms, all sounds. So he could infinite forms, infinite sight, infinite sounds, and infinite touch. A contact thrilled of mighty unknown things, awakened to new unearthly closenesses. The touch replied to subtle infinities. This is the Sukshma Sharir. You could touch things with your subtle being, get in absolute contact. Sometimes you touch. You say, what did I touch? Somebody is in the room, somebody has come near me, is it a ghost? Maybe. It's a spirit, not necessarily something that is wicked or bad. Because the universe is a playfield of all kinds of forces. And if you are sensitive, if you have developed your faculties, if you have opened up, sometimes unknowingly this is done. A genius does it. He's opened sometimes to sounds and sights which he did not think about. It is like a vessel that is filled by experiences. Or someone who has worked on his nature, like a yogi, he comes in touch with all these planes, and with a silver cry of opening gates, sights lightnings leaped into the invisible. So this is what really happens when we expand the field of our experience. There are poets who say, O world invisible, we view thee. O world intangible, we touch thee. It is we go beyond the limits of the small physical nature. We stop there today.